The US entered the Great War in April 1917 with no tanks and no experience with tanks. But by November 1918, they'd formed 2 tank corps, fought their first tank actions, and begun construction of at least 3 distinct types of tank. Expecting the war to continue into 1919, the US began development of a new heavy tank in conjunction with Britain. The Mark 8 owed much to the earlier British designs, but represented a step forward. Mainland US production of a version of the French Renault FT had also been undertaken. The M1917 light tank would form the backbone of America's post-war tank force. And finally, Ford had undertaken the design, development and manufacture of America's first indigenously designed and produced tank, the M1918 light tank. The Ford was intended to be a cheaper option, utilising off-the-shelf parts, such as Ford Model T engines, but was disliked by those with practical experience, and just 15 were built before the end of the war. In late 1917, the US Army established the US Tank Corps in France, and in March 1918, the US Tank Service, later known as the Tank Corps National Army in the US. The Tank Corps in France grew rapidly, with 29 battalions established, but only 4 of these saw action before the end of the war. With no American-made tanks available, the US tank units were equipped with French Renault FTs and British Mark V heavy tanks. Captain George S. Patton established the Corps' first training school in November 1917, before being given command of the 1st Provisional Tank Brigade. The rapidly expanding American Tank Corps in France was commanded by Brigadier General Samuel Rockenbach. The first American tank unit seen action in September 1918 at the Battle of Saint-Mihiel using French FTs. A couple of weeks later, the 301st Tank Battalion took Mark V heavies into action at the Battle of Saint-Quentin Canal. Meanwhile, the US Tank Service in the US, still without tanks, was established at a number of camps, including Camp Colt and Camp Meade. After the war, Rockenbach fought a losing battle with more conservative senior officers to maintain an independent tank corps. But by 1921, the corps had become a branch of the infantry and had shrunk in size. While the flame was kept alive by dedicated officers, tank design and development of armoured tactics stagnated somewhat during the interwar period. Only a handful of Model 1918 Fords were built before the end of the war, but just short of 1,000 M1917s were built and saw extensive service alongside the 218 FTs and 28 British Mark Vs, which returned from France. A handful of M1917s were briefly deployed overseas with the US Marine Corps during the 1920s, but other than that, America's tank force during the interwar period remained at home. The M1917, along with 100 or so Mark 8s which were still in inventory, were finally declared obsolete in the mid-1930s. The US, like many European countries, neglected their tank force during the period between the wars, and it was only in the late 1930s that the development of new vehicles and tactics was given serious consideration again. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed our series looking at the US tanks of World War I. If you missed any of the videos, you can find them all in a dedicated playlist linked below. If you enjoy our videos, please consider supporting Tab via Patreon. We're an entirely community-supported project. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.